When I started my PhD, Rodney Brooks was writing some of his wonderful papers. I think Elephants Don't Play Chess is one of the seminal papers. I mean, that's about 93 from memory. And so, the work that Rod Brooks was doing with his students like Paddy Mays, for example, at MIT at that time was just mind-blowing. Because what Rod showed was that, hey, remember all that stuff, the classical AI, where we have to try and find everything in the world, make a model of it, compute and search through it, make a plan, execute the plan. He said, no, you don't. Right? All you need to do is sense the world, make some sense of it, maybe keep a little bit of state and make some decisions without having to have complex models. And this was a real parallel to the idea that there are some very simple principles of intelligence that enable a lot of reaction that goes on in things that we call intelligent without necessarily going the whole way on to solving the chess problem or some problem there that's really not perhaps so relevant to what intelligence really means. Yeah. I was working my way through my PhD. I was building my micromice at the same time. So 1994 was a great year. 1994 was the year we had Kooky 3, right, the final evolution of the Kooky family. And Kooky 3 went on to win the world champs in 95 and 96. This thing would rip around the maze doing about 4 meters a second down the straights, cornering 1 to 2 meters a second, and do things like cut corners and run down diagonals and did all the party tricks. And we were beating mice from places like MIT and University of Tokyo and real top class place. So that was a great feeling in 94. And the other thing that happened in 94 was that I had the opportunity to teach the robotics course. This was my first taste of university teaching. And it was a real eye-opener to me how exciting it is to work with a classroom, to have a class engaged with these ideas around robotics and the exciting things that you can do with robots. And I became very excited about the role that education can play with advancing the way that people are approaching engineering problems. So the things that I was trying to do with robotics in those classes, I know, to this day has produced over the years. I mean, I had about 20 years of teaching robotics. You see the thinking that emerges from working with robots and ideas around the way that you control robots and show that robots can display intelligent behaviour, show up in all kinds of engineering systems, power systems, the way that mines operate, construction. A lot of these kids were in my robotic class and they tell me, these are still things that they engage with today. So look, 94 was the beginning of that. 1994, when I began teaching, I had my thesis about half written. So 91 to 94, 3 years, thesis about half written, should have had 6 months to go. I got really caught up in this teaching stuff in 94. So the PhD didn't actually get finished until 1997. The sense back then, people were curious about it. I don't think students took it because they saw that this was going to be their future. It was a standalone course. It was not a fourth-year elective that students could take. So really it was their one taste of robotics. So they would have done a control theory course and a robotics course. And a lot of the course was around robot arms and the way that you do the calculations around the way that robot arms move and the dynamics of robots' arms and how you control them. But then started to bleed that into, what about mobile robots? What about intelligent robots as well, which I was able to touch on in that material. It wasn't until some time later that we actually turned it into a full-blown mechatronic engineering course. Getting to the end of the PhD was tough. It was what I was trying to do with Corgi was to teach the robot, tennis ball is something I want and I should steer towards. Everything else that isn't floor obstacles, I should avoid. Now, the trick there was to do this with generalisation. So obstacles needed to generalise from what the robot experienced to go into other places and see them as well. And tennis balls can look very different in different ways. This is kind of the machine learning computer vision problem that it now underpins things like autonomous cars, lots of things that are going on with autonomous robots. But at that time, I'm trying to do this on a 100 megahertz Pentium processor. I think I had 4 megabytes of RAM. It was, I think I had 100 megabytes of hard disk or something. It was, it was a struggle to get the compute to be able to do these kind of machine learning tasks. My iPhone would absolutely eat the computing power that was available to me in those times. So yeah, it was a struggle to actually make these machine learning algorithms come together. But we got there in the end, and the robot was able to show that I could teach it in one room how to find a tennis ball, avoid everything else, take it to another completely different room, and the learning stuck. It was able to generalise. And that was the big thing that came out of my thesis. And that was pretty exciting, because to me this was the kind of glimmerings of intelligence that I've not written a piece of code that makes a robot do something. It's found within its little learning brain a way that it understands the concepts of obstacle-iness and tennis balliness, and is able to pull those two things together and demonstrate that it understands them by the way that it behaves.